What's up guys, my name is Timbo, and today we're taking a look at The Division 2. Revealed at Microsoft's press conference, The Division 2 looks to solve many of the problems the first iteration left for it to solve. And while many of these are doable and actually seem like they will be fixed the second time around, there is one thing about The Division that simply cannot be changed. And it is this that is the topic for today's video. Before we get into it, if you think this is going to be a video where I just hate on The Division 2 and all the negativity that goes along with that, you are mistaken. It also doesn't mean that I think The Division 2 is gonna be a bad game. It doesn't mean that I think Massive won't fix a ton of the issues that plagued The Division 1. It's no secret that I like Destiny, it's no secret that I'm a game changer for Anthem, but that does not mean I want The Division 2 to be a bad game. Quite honestly, I don't think it will be. I think it will be very good. Personally, as I've stated before on this channel, The Division and I have our ups and downs. Like many people out there, I was beyond excited for the first game ever since I saw its original reveal all the way back in 2013. Man, do I feel old. And as I'm sure you could guess, I was pretty underwhelmed. I tried sticking with the game for a long time, but finally gave up on it. Since then, I've come back to it at times and have had some hope restored, but there has always been one big issue The Division can never seem to fix. And that is because it is so innately written into the code and very concept of this game. That, of course, being the setting. Now, when I say setting, I'm not referring to New York or Washington, D.C. I'm talking about the fact that The Division tries to be an online, open-world RPG game set in the real and visceral Tom Clancy world. Right off the bat, I wouldn't say The Division gives itself an automatic disadvantage, but it certainly makes things harder on itself. Games like Destiny or Anthem, for example, have a much easier time creating crazy abilities, boss mechanics, weapon types, and other things simply because it fits the world the game is set in. The Division doesn't have this luxury. Every time they want to create a new ability, or make a new weapon, or introduce a new enemy type, or construct a raid, it has to fit within the realms of the real world. And this was something that brought down the first Division, and it's one thing I hope more than anything doesn't stick around for the second iteration. This is something you cannot take away without breaking up what The Division is. They're going to have to work around it in some way. Is this doable? I think so, but it's gonna be hard, and it needs to be something Massive and Ubisoft are cognizant of when creating The Division 2, specifically the endgame content. To get into this, we're going to take a look back at the first Division. I know that sounds so exciting, and specifically look at where, in my opinion, this was an issue. And I will do so by placing everything into two categories where this was the most apparent, those being gear and mechanics. So let's start with gear. The gear in The Division 1, let's be honest, it sucked. I know it got a little bit better as far as cosmetics go as the game got older and older, but generally speaking, the endgame consisted of picking between which dull colored beanie hat to wear. For me at least, the fact that the gear you would actually see on your character had no stats was a bit of a bummer. So when you'd kill a boss and get some really cool high-end loot, you'd look exactly the same. Maybe this will automatically be less of a problem in The Division 2 because you won't have jackets covering up your gear since it's taking place in the summer now opposed to the winter. But still, I think the gear set thing was such a cool idea, but I really want the gear sets to stand out cosmetically and be noticeable when you equip them. Part of an RPG isn't just the number, isn't just feeling powerful, it's walking around and having someone stop in their tracks because of how cool you look. In The Division 1, this was just not possible really, everyone looked the same. For me, this actually kind of became a reason why I stopped feeling the inclination to play. People like to compare Destiny and The Division a lot, so I'll do that here. In terms of rewards, they go about things to two different extremes, and I don't like either one of them. In Destiny, you chase a look without any feeling of power, and in The Division, you chase a number without any aesthetic. In Destiny, the gear you receive in endgame activities looks really cool, but there's no point in chasing them other than that. Mobility, recovery, whatever they're called, they don't do anything. I can't even remember the names of them, they're that pointless. The gear doesn't have any real perks on it anymore, you don't have to upgrade weapons anymore. Sure, this looks to be changing now to an extent with Forsaken, but Destiny has been like this for a while in the past. In The Division 1, it was the complete opposite. The gear you'd get didn't have a notorious name like Galorn. It didn't look noticeable, and if it did, you couldn't even see it most of the time. I can't tell you how many times I'd get something that I thought looked really cool, only to get it covered up. In The Division 1, you'd chase a number to make your stats a little bit higher and min-max everything. And sure, this would create a feeling of an increase in power, but that was it. In an RPG that's all about getting loot, you need to have some sense of both. So for the Division 2, they need to make the gear and weapons you get be cool, look cool, be unique, other than the number stat that's attached to them. I know this is harder than it sounds, especially with the setting that's been chosen, but that's the whole point of this video. The other side of this is the mechanics. This is basically a word I'm using to describe all of the combat in the game. The enemy types, the incursions, the missions, stuff like that. Right off the bat, the enemies in the Division 1 didn't do much for me. I know a lot of people would have issues with pumping a million bullets into a human enemy because it would break the sense of immersion. Personally, I knew the type of game this was going in, so even though initially I think they overdid it, after toning it down a little bit, I never really had issues. The problem I had with the enemies in the first game was this. They abused the fact that they could take a ton of bullets before dying and were lacking variation. Now, I know the original E3 trailer for the Division 1 was not representative of the final product. I still think, looking back at it, that it looks better than the Division 2. The graphics and movement, and especially the HUD, are still better, at least in my opinion. But that's beside the point. In that trailer, the enemies used cover. They maneuvered around the battlefield. In the final product of the Division 1, you'd have countless enemies standing out in the open the entire time, pistol whipping you and not caring about cover at all. So you just stand there behind cover and riddle them with bullets until their crazy amount of health would be depleted. In the Division 2, I'd like to see smarter, more realistic AI, I guess is what I'm saying. And then as far as variation, this goes for specific enemies as well as the encounters you'd see in activities like incursions, for example. If we're sticking with enemies here, sure there are different factions in the game and that's fine. I think it makes sense as far as world building and stuff like that. But in terms of if they feel different from one another, or I suppose have varied mechanics and strategy for fighting them, there wasn't really much. If I can remember, there were melee enemies, shotgunners, snipers, guys with shields, tanks with tons of body armor, and that was about it. But now it seems like by the looks of the different specialist abilities you can choose from after hitting the max level, that hive swarm thing looks cool, and the addition of some enemies such as the guy that shoots the goop, I don't know what else to call it, and they seem to be putting more of an emphasis on critical hits to take down armored guys. So if stuff like this is consistent throughout the game and the enemies as well as yourself have tons of different cool abilities to use either to attack or counter, would be really cool. T-play is something I like, so if the Division could do something like Arc Solar Void Shield type of stuff where you use one specific thing to damage another specific thing, or like an Anthem where the Colossus can combo damage off of a Ranger's Frost Grenade, that would be really cool. Just more variation is what I'm saying. It got stale quickly in the Division 1. And the same thing can be applied to the missions. I am super excited for 8-player raids in the Division 2, but I'm just saying, if all of it consists of sitting in one room, moving a box from one place to another while having to constantly dodge roll every 2 seconds, I'm gonna be upset. That was actually a comment I saw on the Division 2 trailer that I thought was really sad but kind of true and funny. It said something like how the gameplay here is so tactical, but then the finished product is gonna have guys standing out in the open, strafing and rolling everywhere like a chicken with its head cut off, spraying a bunch of bullets. You know, as an agent, give me a way to feel unique and give me a role. Make the enemies dangerous, but not just in a sense that they have a lot of health and deal a lot of damage. Make them smart and give them cool abilities to counter. By the looks of it, this might be the case for the Division 2, but we'll just have to wait and see how far they stretch this visceral world setting. Personally, if they just basically copied and pasted a lot of the specialists from Rainbow Six, I wouldn't even be mad. Do what they did, it's cool and unique, but still set in reality. And that's pretty much it. Over the course of the Division's lifecycle, they have made a lot of improvements, and I fully intend them to take these into the second game. However, with a fully fledged sequel, this is the time to make drastic changes, not just add more content. Obviously, I want more of the things I liked about the Division 1, but I would also like to see them use this real-world setting as an advantage to separate them from the crowd, rather than being held back by it like in the first game. If they can pull that off, they're gonna have something really special here, even though it's still not as cool looking as the 2013 trailer. So guys, those are my thoughts on the Division 2 and the things in my eyes it needs to do to be successful. I have a lot of faith for the Division 2. I think the state that the first game is in right now is really good, and if they can keep this momentum going and really polish out these few things that have been holding them back, this can become an amazing game. But those are just my thoughts, now I want to hear yours. What do you think about the Division 2? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, if you could please leave a like. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.